Myself, Sathish Kumar Thiyagarajan. I'm in this industry for the last 20 years. I'm pretty much in technology. I do anything that is open source. I keep switching, but I predominantly stay in open source. The majority of my career, I spend with Java. I'm also one of the co-organizers for Bangalore Java user group. You can see me in meetup groups, conferences in Java, JavaScript, and all this stuff. Now, I'll just, my intro is also related to this story, so I'll go a little extended intro here. I belong to Bangalore Java user group where we conduct regular meetups on Java. That is one team that I work with. And I also work with another team called techatpark.com where we teach school kids, college kids at our leisure time. And we help people with lesser marks, not good in communication from tier 2 cities to get their first job, we help. And also whatever that I'm doing in Tech Park, I get money and do it at our Kadai. I work as a CTO. It's a software consulting firm where we do consulting or software related items. So I basically work with 3 distributed teams, 3 teams with 3 different skill sets. Okay, now coming to our actual talk today. So as I said, anytime that you have a question, don't hesitate to ask. You stop there and then ask. So this talk is for people who are basically in 3 categories. So I'll go one by one. First of all, who are all still stuck with monolith in your application? Still working with monolith? Okay. Few. Okay. Who all are migrated from monolith and now you are in a journey of microservice? Second category. Okay. Now there's 3rd category. Who all are experienced microservice and say enough is enough and going back to monolith?
No, there
are plenty. No, don't hesitate. Okay, so either it will be like an onward journey or an upward downward journey actually. So this talk is for all 3. Every time we face problem in technology, we immediately blame people, their decision and all stuff. You need to logically think why we are using it. All tools are great, but only thing is that you need to use the tool at the right place. For example, you might have a very good cricket bat, but if you are playing tennis with it, you cannot blame the tool. Right? That is how microservices also. Microservice came into market for a specific purpose, and we are using it for all the purpose that it is not meant to be. Then it will fail. So we'll go one by one. Before we go to any technology understanding, it's always important to learn a little bit of history also. Sometimes we skip history classes in colleges, but actually it is the history which decides what kind of problem that we are going to solve. And it is a problem which decides what kind of solution that we are going to put. And the solution is what we call it as technology. So a little bit of history is always important. So microservice is not a binary choice. It's not like one problem for one solution for everything, but we'll go to that. But the great debate. So in organization, we see these debates everywhere now, at least last couple of years. As a software engineers, we face a lot of challenges. What are all our challenges? Teams are struggling to stay productive. Application is not scaling as much as what we want to do. My response time is sluggish. Response time is both application as well as my response time as a team to deliver features is kind of sluggish. Hard time clearing job interviews. Of course, that is also a problem for us. For all these problems, our industry gave only one solution, microservices. So we consider that you use microservice, all these 4 problems that we listed will be solved. But is it reality? That only experience will tell, and that is why some people raise their hands going away from microservice to monolith. The transformation. So earlier it was monolith, and monolith people move to microservices, and from microservice, what is a new word that is a buzzword? When you are going back, what is a new word? Okay. So every time sometimes we go a little bit off topic to understand this technology better. Every time we make wrong decision, when we want to go back, we cannot go back saying that we made a mistake. It will affect a lot of people's life. So one popular example is there was a word called cloud first development. How many of you are familiar with this? Cloud first. Okay. So few years before, 5 years before, I think, when cloud came into picture, every CTO stack will have that cloud first development. Okay, what is cloud first development? You be little loud.
Having the services compatible with the cloud services. And the applications designed in such a way that they start off with on-prem, but on safer side, they want to push it in cloud also.
Cloud first. Keep everything in the cloud. All the workload that you have, keep it in cloud, keep it cloud. They throw all their computers, they went to cloud. And later they realized when they saw that their actual bills, cloud bills, then only they realized that it is not a good idea. It's like, no, you're renting a house. It's okay. Renting a house is good. Buying a house is also good, but it depends on your situation. For example, if you're running a business, Factory has to be your own facility. But showrooms, not necessarily, because you put showrooms randomly, right? That is what cloud is all about. So it's not like you move to cloud always. Now, how are we dealing that same problem now? We don't see cloud first now. What is the new technology that we are talking about? Hybrid cloud. What is hybrid cloud? Going back. But we are not saying we are going back. We just put a new term and then we are comfortably going back. Same way, now monolith, microservice, what is the next word? Modular monolith. But we will see about what is this exactly all this mean. We'll go one by one. So before we go to microservices, there is a cautionary tale. Last time I had a call in Infosys. After that, my mentor called me and then she told that, Sathish, I think you are too much one-sided towards monoliths. So maybe this time we'll be careful. I'm not taking a side, but we'll take a right in-between path. So cautionary tale is, this is what my application earlier. It was a monolithic application, which had a user interface, business layer, data interface, and the database. And then I modernized it with the 3 services. Now tell me, from the old one to new one, what are all the improvements that I should have? One by one we will go. From the deployment cost, am I reduced or am I increased? How?
New instances was 5
If I have 2 services, how many minimum instances that I should have in microservices?
2, 4.
Yeah. So it comes with a server cost. Okay. Now consider that your good name. Branchu.
Yes.
Branchu is my customer. So I am giving some insurance software for him.
But I have to say, like in monolithic, we are having very high server. It cost was $1,000. But now we are in microservices, we are having low server, cost is $50. Then in this way we can save the cost also.
How do you calculate the cost? You are calculating only the server cost, right?
Server and depend on the services.
I have a question, sir.
Just for discussion,
It is a very important point, sir. When we talk about cost, we are ultimately going towards return on investment. Is return on investment only the hardware procurement cost which we are using, or it also brings in the cost of the complexity of the new platform, the personnel and the skills needed to maintain the new platform, the skills needed to keep upgrading the platform, as well as the personnel who are maintaining the platform.
Yeah.
Because I'll just bring one small data point here. Monoliths have been around for a good 30-40 years. Microservices are a new trend. Because of microservices, we are also bringing in other new, I would say, paradigms into the architecture, like a Kubernetes cluster, like elastic Kubernetes services or whatever. Each of these abstractions which we bring in come with 2 challenges: knowledge of the abstraction and how do you protect that abstraction layer. Because for an enterprise, 2 things are paramount. One, 100% uptime, 100% security or complete security. Given these 2 are the most critical, I would say, benchmarks on which any platform is evaluated, these, I believe, should also be factored into your cost, and then accordingly the ROI for the platform or for the approach.
Yeah, I'm adding that also. So now coming to your question, sir, cost wise. So now server wise, number of servers are increased. Second, you all follow by book. There is some word 12 factor. If it is not 12 factor, you are not considered microservice. How many of you are following the 12 factor strictly? Cloud native 12 factor. Okay. Now, as per one of the book definition, it says every service is independent, which means you should have your own server, your own database, right? Now, I need 3 databases. Now, what is the additional complexity that I should have is, okay, what is the additional complexity that I should have is, I need to make sure that these databases are in sync with each other, which means I need to bring another skill set also. Apart from the additional complexity, I need to bring another skill set also. And second thing, what happens to performance? Am I giving a better performance with microservices? Why? Particularly network, what is happening? We are using REST predominantly. We use Fiend client. We consider that Fiend client, we are making 1 line of code, but ultimately it's a REST API, text-based protocol. What is happening is, earlier you used to make calls between Java to Java, between C++ to C++. But now what you need to do is From one service, you make one REST call, which means a text that will convert it as Java object. And then in the receiving side, it receives, from Java, it will be HTTP, from HTTP, it will be Java. From again, Java to HTTP, HTTP to Java. So this marshalling and demarshalling will be unnecessarily causing you performance related issues. Now the outcome wise, if you consider the cost is increased, complexity is increased because of team politics, because everybody is divided, everybody makes their own decision. And there is another complexity which nobody talks about, but it is reality. How many of you are using at least more than 20 microservices in your organization? 10, 20. Have you seen this problem? Even though you are using Java, anything in your project, one project will be in Spring 2, another project will be in Spring 2.5, another project in 2.7, another project in Spring 2.3. Now consider everything going properly, it's okay. Now there is a vulnerability. Recently there was a huge vulnerability. Which library? Log4j. Now company says, boss, move. Now what will you do? Every team I need to go and talk to. It became a nightmare. You lost your control there, right? So that is the complexity. So by going to microservice, what I achieved, I increased the cost to the customer. Same that I was offering to him 10 rupees. I'm going to tell that same functionality. Only thing is that I will have better complexity, better cost, and better lack of productivity, lack of standard, because it will take more time. And as an app and a team, the performance will go slow. Performance for the app is because of that marshalling and demarshalling. But what about the teams? Because now I need to coordinate between the teams. And how do you solve your testing problem now? You will introduce another point called contract testing. Packed, new skill again. Unpacked, most of the time you'll be fighting with each other. Whether fiend claim has to be developed by my own team or it should be developed by the consumer team. There's a long debate. And it's a bad practice for the consumer to develop it. It's a bad practice. We'll go to that later, but basically your performance is low. Now, how do you accept this as a customer? My customer, will you accept all this? Bottom line that we realized over the period is microservice. Is it only for rich? Unfortunately, that is how it goes. You need to be rich in terms of skill sets, in terms of money, in terms of all the infrastructure that you have. Now, monolithic, and okay, sometimes we go, I will go to the technical part in the third chapter. But before I go there, I just want to set a conceptually right mindset. So let us see monolith and microservice as families. Monolith is like a giant family where everybody lives happily. Microservices is like nuclear family. Whether giant family is good or nuclear family is good, it depends. You can be any family, but you should be a happy family, right? So now, how this thing happens is, for example, I am a giant family. I am living happily. I understand my brothers, sisters. I live happily. And you are just breaking the family because it is not a trend. Because nuclear family is modern day Gen X trend. If you are breaking for that reason, you are going to pay the price. Similarly, I don't go well with my family, or I have problem of space issue. I'm not able to stay within my family. I have scalability issues where I need more money and all those stuff. I have my opportunities, which is there in Bangalore, but my family is in Madurai. Then you can think of going through microservices, that is nuclear family. So here, the decision is made based on the logic, not by any emotion, not by any peer pressure. Then it will be a happy family. Consider that your product is family. Ultimately, product has to be happy, whether it is monolithic or microservice. Okay, one factor that you need to keep from there is splitting a family is very, very, very easy. In one episode, they will split the family in web series, but it takes seasons to combine the family, right? So that factor consider. So it's just a warning message. Again, I will cover that. I will cover that later. I will go the positive point for microservices also. In case if I leave, please remind it to me, because last time I skipped the Infosys meetup guys, they know it was more towards microservices. So fourth, now let us understand microservices through Vadapav. I hope everybody is familiar with Vadapav, right? So let us destructure this Vadapav to understand what is this microservices all about. So this is what Vadapav is all about, in case if you are. Now, what is this Vadapav is made of? Vadapav, even though it looks like a single product, it is not single product. It is built with 4 different services. Service number 1, the platform to launch your Vadapav. In your case, it is JDK. Service number 2, the foundation layer, which is your library, Spring Boot, Quarkus, or whatever it is. Then your Vada, which is made by your own team. Then the chutney, which is also made by your own team. Now, the first 2 and the last 2, what is the significant difference?
If we talk about microservices, platform and this infrastructure and the platform can be available.
Okay. Maybe I'll just take one perspective. If anybody disagrees, correct me. Your POW, this is POW, right? Manju only corrected me, Mani. This is called POW, right? Bun is POW, right? Okay. This bun is not made by your own team. Bun you are purchasing from some bakery. This foundation is not made by you. You are finding it from some Maggi ketchup or something like that. But vada, you make it. Chutney, you make it. That is the services. So that is the service that I want. But at the same time, all together it is your product. You cannot just ignore that bun. I'm not even buying it. Bun is also very, very important. Which JDK version you use, very, very important. Right? Usually people skip that step very easily. Which Spring version you use, it's very, very important. Now we will go to the technical perspective of ADAPA. We'll go one by one. So how this is being constructed is, I constructed it as a true microservice. What is true microservice? Is in those three teams that I worked, now let us split this. Bangalore Jug, which service I should outsource to Bangalore Jug in this entire thing? My JDK, they are good in making JDK, right? Because they are good Java experts. So I will go to Bangalore Jug team. So this is distributorly located team. So I'm going to Bangalore Jug team. In Bangalore Jug team, I have the Vada Pav platform is being built. What is the platform? It's basically JDK, right? So this is the final product. So here you see, it's built with JDK 20, Spring Boot 2.7.13. Now this is Vada service. This is Chili Chutney. Now all four are four microservices for me. Now I'm saying I'm going to change this to say 19. As an organization, I want to move to 90. I'm saying I'm moving to 90. Now once I commit the changes, what happens is I'm using GitHub Actions here. So what happens is, so this team has done something and they are not communicating with anybody. They are not having any online meeting, collaboration, all that. They just committed. Now it is building the changes. Let them build their changes. Meanwhile, I will go to my third team, which is our my own team, which needs to prepare this actual vada and chutney. So in our we have this chutney service. Now again, it's a different project, different skill set, different team. I'm going to this. I'm going to chutney. Where I'm saying it's currently giving chili chutney, but I will make it as. So this person again, he's not talking to anybody else. He doesn't care about JDK teams, or he doesn't care about this other Spring Boot teams and all those stuff. So now he committed his changes. So all that it happened is his team will design, tested, developed, and deployed separately. Now this deployment will happen. Let us see what happened to our previous service. My build is successful. Now let us look at my product. Refresh. Now it comes from 90. So we are not talking with each other. In fact, this is what we want to achieve with microservices, right? We want to have independence. We want to develop separately. Okay. Now, meanwhile, I made that changes. Let us see. It should reflect. Let us see. Oh, actions. Oh, it says its action is successful. In case if action is successful, it was chili chutney earlier. Now I refresh. It becomes mint chutney. So I delivered the product. I designed, developed, tested, delivered the product separately. Okay. Now we will go to what is the one thing that we want to change. I don't want to change anybody from other services, but I want to change. I want to use my TechEdPark team, which is good in Spring. So I go to TechEdPark. And this is what the change that we are talking about. Now consider that there is a severe security vulnerability come that I need to migrate from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. Of course, this is not a straightforward change as we think. Spring Boot 3 takes considerable amount of effort, and we have a separate call, detailed call in the conference for that. There will be on good speakers talking about that. But I made a simplified application. So consider that mine is a simplified version, provided I did all the homework that is needed for that Spring Boot 3 migration. There's a lot of homework needed for Spring Boot 3 migration. So I have done all the homework already. So for me, all that I need is make the change. I'm making the change to 3.0.6. Updating the pom.xml. Again, this person also doesn't need to communicate with anybody. He will just update the pom.xml and then let it build here. Here are actions. Let it build. Okay. So far, any doubts here? So how many services that I have now? Two services. So this comes with multiple terminologies together. It does not get complicated with it. The one technique that I have used, it's called hexagonal architecture. What is hexagonal architecture? In hexagonal architecture is a very simple principle, but I strongly recommend we all consider that seriously. What hexagonal architecture says is, you create your infrastructure as a separate entity. For example, in my case, my JDK, my library dependencies, all are my infrastructure, which I kept it as a separate repo. Basically, you remember we were discussing about this log4j problem now, right? It's no longer my problem. In my world, in my organization, all microservices will belong to same foundation, same platform. At any time that I want to change, I will change it in one place. I still have the flexibility, everybody can work independently, but I still hold the control. And how we do that is through a technique called hexagonal architecture. We'll have a separate talk on that sometime later. But in a simple terms, hexagonal architecture means if you are writing business logic, that has to be separate. If you are writing any infrastructure related code, that has to be separate. You should not mingle both. Any point in time, if somebody says you migrate from Spring 2 to Spring Boot 3, it should not impact any one of the business developer. They should continue to work what they are continuing to do. And if you reach that, that is what hexagonal architecture advice. But in a very strange case, it can go up to changing from Spring Boot to Quarkus also, but that is very rare. But you will have some related flexibility. Now it says it has built it. Now let us see. Yes. How do we
decouple the dependencies of the project in the project with the usage of the code? Because you said these infrastructure components on these things should be set. So right under this log4j, it's tightly coupled to my code.
How do we do that? Yes, I'll go to that. So now, meanwhile, see, Spring Boot 3 migration is done. Just one button click. But the warning is Spring Boot 3 migration needs lot of prep work. Only if you do the prep work, then you can do the migration. I have done my prep. So coming to your thing, what type of dependency that you are talking about?
Generally, what we see for available in all the codes. Maybe versions are there.
Okay. Okay. Good question.
Related to the same question. Now you change the JDK part, right? You change the
Decremented.
How it was reflecting in the services?
Both the services, right? Yeah, very good question. So now let us go to the actual part. Whatever that you see now in this app, it looks microservice, but actually it is not microservice. It's only one machine that we have. Only one machine that we have. People who have spent more time in microservice, at least now, they realize this fact that microservice is not meant for developers. Microservice is meant for deployment people. Deployment people. So, if you are a capable architect or capable engineer, you need to make your system in such a way it can be combined together, deployed, or it can be separated as and when the need comes. It's a flexibility that you are supposed to give it to your deployment engineer. And even I will take one step higher, whether we are following this principle right or not. If your developer feels that you are working in microservice, in any sense, if your developer feels that he or she works in microservice, then you are not following microservice. Developer should not even feel that they are working in microservice. Maybe did I answer your question? Or I'm just going to define.
I got the answer, but then still the question can be modified further. See, okay, I understand here it looks like you are working, you all are deployed on the same
machine. Same machine.
So it reflects.
Correct.
In case if I have a monolithic architecture, I might still have two different parts. Two different services running on different JVMs. In that case, if JVM not using.
Very good, very good. We had a detailed talk on this in Bangalore, Jagat, that we specifically talk about why this JVM has to be separated. Because every JDK release that you have, it is not just yet another release. For you, Microsoft people are working, Oracle people are working, all these FANG companies are working in JDK, right? Which means if you are not upgrading JDK, you are losing all their hard work, which is coming for free. So for that reason, the way that this is being created, and in fact, what is being advised is whether you are creating it part or not, you need to create it as an horizontal service, this JDK platform and other stuff. Every time that you touch that service, if you're using CI/CD, all your projects will be taken, build it, containerized it, and submitted. It should reflect. It should reflect. Of course, there will be duplicate, but duplicate is only the deployment. But from this one, it's from the development side, it is common.
But in that case, I understand what you're saying. But it cannot happen independently without informing the team, right?
Example cannot happen. It should not happen.
This is a crucial thing, right? The version of the JVM itself is changed. So your system has to be communicated.
Yes, and no. Yes, if you are migrating from 8 to 11. No, if you are migrating after 11. Because Java is good at backward compatibility. You can confidently go. But between 8 and 11, there were backward compatibility issues. So, of course, even if it is there, it will be a well-informed decision. But I'm saying if informed, it should be one click. That is what we can control. But it depends on organization to organization how they want to put the hierarchy. But your question is right. Did I answer your question? Okay, now coming to your dependency side, we will go now. Let us for a moment think from a person who creates this service in Spring Boot. When you are creating service class or a repository class, do you really care about which version of Spring that you are using? No, right? So the way that I created is what I followed is very simple. There are some complex techniques also. It depends on project to project. The way that I achieved. Now, shall we go to the technical perspective of how we did it? Because this is what I couldn't cover last time, right? So we'll go to the technical part of how we did this. There are n number of ways to do this. Microservices, whatever that we are trying to do. Sometimes old fashion is gold fashion. What you are seeing here is a simple trick in JVM. JVM has a very important feature where you can dynamically load certain items. What is it called? JVM has a feature where you can dynamically load your code. What is it called? Something. Yeah, even one level. Class loader. Who answered it? Yeah, Raja sir. Okay, sorry, you should not answer. So you're an expert. So class loader. The class loader can load your classes in different ways. All that I did is one of the techniques that Spring uses, it uses something called a loader. You can Google and then find it. Spring has a feature called a loader. Unfortunately, it's not my machine. Rahul helped me. My machine has some problem. Otherwise, I would have shown that this is running in a cloud machine, cloud provider called a Linode, where I opened that and then showed how it actually looks like behind the screen. So the way that I did this is I have one deployment directory where I have a platform directory where I put my JRE. So every time you change it, GitHub Action put the JRE there. One. Point number 2. Every time that you change the main service, this is a place where your actual question, Vadapa foundation, right? Foundation, yeah, foundation. This is that infrastructure service, actual Spring Boot service, where if you look at it, my most common dependency is Spring Boot. So my Spring Boot version is here. Look at it, 3.6. And all the services, if they are using something very common, I will use it here. That is what I configure. Now, if I go to my original service, where your question is, if we go to from a developer side, it will let you to do any Spring version. It doesn't even care. But when you build the binary, it will exclude all that depends on the specific version of Spring Boot. So it will take only the jar. Now Spring supports something called loader. With the loader, what you can say is you can actually external jar. There will be a file called loader.properties. In that you can say Spring Boot, when you start my project, one small change that you need to do. Okay, before I go to that, let us look at this. Which version that I'm using here? Spring 2. but actually my deployment was 3. Because the last part, do you see there is something strange in that last part? Usually in Spring Boot, you put something called build plugins. I'm not putting that. Because that is the guy responsible for packaging your file into one map. That I'm not doing, which means it's an yet another jar. It will take only the classes that I have. Simple. Now what I'm doing is on the other side, in the loader, I'm saying in the deployment, Spring Boot, please, when you start it, you load from this folder whatever jar file that is located. Chutney service, Bonda service are being copied into that directory. And one additional step that I need to do, for if you want to consider this, you should not make it as a typical fat jar that you are putting. Rather, when you create a Spring Boot jar, in that layout, you need to make a small tweak. You should say your layout is zip. Zip. And there's a lot of other ways also. You can put it as a simple class path variable also, you can do. Okay. Now what I have done is, I have created a service, 3 different services. Now I am giving this option to the customer. Tomorrow, if they want, they can deploy Chutney service as a different thing and then they get scale. But if I'm supporting multiple customers, if one customer says I'm very poor, I'm saying, okay, put it in a single machine. If you have a need, you separate it. By doing so, I am giving that flexibility to my customer who can actually put it as per what they want. So this is what this chapter is about, but we'll go one more chapter also. There is one more. So every time we think that the movie is over, there will be a twist. So we'll go to the twist. But so far, any doubts?
So packaging this foundation the service.
Yeah, packaging is like here. It's a typical build plugin, so it will package. Huh? I'm not containerizing now because I'm considering JVM as my container. But you're, in case if you want, you need to put it in Docker or something like that. But for me, I consider JVM as my container. Keep it simple.
The JVM, you have put this foundation here and both the services you have combined.
Yes, I have just 3 folders. Platform folder that contains JRE. Foundation folder that contains my Spring Boot actual application where I do Java-jar starter. And then an external services folder where I put all my other services jars. So every time Spring Boot starts, we get the JDK from there, load all this binaries.
You put in the JVM.
Yes, yes, yes.
So all will be running on the
same port, same part. Yes. Same port also. Yeah. And if need be, I will split it. Based on that.
Different services.
Yes.
You look at as a code.
Yes. Yes.
What you have removed is when you deploy, it's all like
it's all their flexibility. They, based on that, whatever they want to deploy, they can deploy Microservices. Now we will go to our actual slide now. But before we go there, this is one thing that I feel people miss in this microservice presentation. Every time somebody asks about which one is suitable for me, people are giving opinion like this is also like this will also suit, that will also suit. If you want to give a diplomatic answer, don't be an engineer. So you need to give, even if it is opinionated, give hard rules or hard facts. Okay, don't shy away from that. But whatever that I'm putting again, you don't need to follow it. You need to go and fact check. So I will put, based on my experience, I will put 3 recommendations here. 1, monolith is not a bad approach. As long as it works properly, it is satisfying your problem. There is no need to feel bad that your application is using monolithic. There are a lot of people who are still running it as monolithic. One recent example is now only people realize that because it's Amazon who is saying it. Google is also saying it better. We'll go to that slide also. It is generally not advisable to start the project as microservice, which is a so bad activity. And startup companies especially are doing this mistake. I don't know why. If you're a product company, your product should be your first priority. And starting in microservice, it invites huge cost, huge complexity upfront. Grow as a monolith. Slowly, you go to microservices as and when the demand it comes as a demand.
Sorry, but as a startup, like what if they are startup taking a monolith as an approach, then they have to buy a server, and they don't even know that their startup is going to take or something.
Yes,
that
yes.
is going to remain.
Yes, yes.
So for the startups, like everybody advocate that you should build your microservice architecture so that
For a startup, right? Okay.
maybe
Everybody advice. Okay. But yeah, this is a very interesting project. So before I wind up, I just want to keep one thing. There is something wrong in my slide also. I said the 3 generations, right? What is that? Monolith, microservice, modular monolith. Many consider that it's like going to something and then coming back to the same thing. But it's a small change. When you are going to something and learned your lessons and coming back, will you be coming back to the same thing, or you will come back with all the lessons learned? And that is what this new generation of microservices will do. So these projects will cover your performance related issues, inter-service related call, develop as monolith and deploy as microservice. These are the lessons, right? These projects, this one, and in Spring there is an interesting project called Spring. In Spring there is an interesting project, Spring Monolith, right? So these are all towards that. But a small piece of warning that I would like to give you is, don't chase these frameworks. You think as a service, keep your code very, very simple. Anytime you can choose the framework with, if you are keeping your infrastructure as a separate, but keep it very, very simple. So with that, I will invite Raja sir to share his experience.
I don't know what more to speak because Sathish has already given the tips. But I think the real, whatever we are saying, it is not about monolith or microservices. There are a lot more things which have not become popular. Like, macroservices is nothing but, modular monolith. There is some mini services. SOA is another. They're all evolution towards, serverless. I mean, I think then, after microservices, you have, actually they call it a serverless, but that's a wrong name. Because, what do you write in serverless? How do you realize serverless?
We are not
using the service, but someone else.
But yeah, what do you do? What do you feed serverless?
We are giving our code.
The code.
Yeah, what is that?
So
It's just a function.
Yeah, function as a code. See, you have to always compare microservices with function as a code. But we don't even get that, after 10 years of cloud. See, we are so much masked that, how can you compare microservices with serverless? One is a hardware. You are saying it's a deployment method. But microservices is a code related architecture. Maybe it is good to say serverless architecture, not serverless. You should never compare microservices with serverless. Maybe, the best you can say is serverless architecture or a function as a service. So that way, I think, this is where I think, maybe if some of you attended last meetup, they are very complementary when you see it from a code that, somebody started with microservices. And then they want, why should they go for microservice somebody started with the monolith? What is the need for going to microservices? Is it a job? Is it fancy? Or what is the ultimate aim of doing that? But why do you, yes, that's a scale up. What do you want to scale up? Number of jobs? Number of bugs?
Number, not all the jobs, some job which is required.
But what is the core? Yeah, I just gave some wrong hint. What do you want to scale up?
It can cater the more number of requests, it can service more number of.
Why do you do that?
Because at time to time, these requirements change. Let's say.
What requirement?
Like, let's say I have
To drive more business. To drive more business because
Revenue. That's
revenue,
all.
yeah.
Very simple, right? At the end, you have to see scalability of revenue. And in software world, what is the weapon for you? Is the code. So that way, if you really connect, it is an evolution. They are not competition. But we bring in the concept of employment. We bring in the concept of interviews. We bring in the fanciness. And that is where, these are all non-functional requirements in the context of people's life. But from software angle, they are very complementary. It is like this. Yes, if you want to build a small room, it is better start with a small room. When a startup is small, start with monolith. And then when more and more customers are being added, automatically requirement will tell you that, okay, now I need to have much more modularity. so that it is not just one room, which is a bedroom. I also need to have a kitchen, and then each kitchen I have to customize. And that's where if you start seeing it, either as a monolith or a modular monolith or microservices or serverless, you will see that, oh, it is a logical evolution, and somebody is trying to tell you that we have solved this problem. Why don't you take hints from us? Rather than saying that, he has solved it that way. And if you don't get that intent and apply it, then you will end up in all these debates. It is not, again, I'm saying it is not monolith or microservices, but get the intent of them very right. In fact, I remember, I was so surprised when we were talking, Sathish and myself were talking about whether should we really call it a serverless or is it function as a service, which he also got an idea. And also in fact, I remember in LinkedIn, I posted it long ago that, microservices is supposed to be a deployment magic. Not, it should not be treated as a developer's, kind of thinking. And I remember I have to see my LinkedIn, and now Google has come out with, because see there, what was our thought process in seeing it? Because when you develop a product, what is the easiest way to debug? Exactly. No, if I have one place, then I don't have to worry about interaction within the VM. See, unfortunately, when you say function of services, function as a service, you take any enterprise product, how many functions it can have? Any million? Yes, I would be more than happy to hear that. But even if you think 1 lakh or even 10,000, that itself is a very complex process. And that's where if you see what Amazon has came back, they're actually talking about don't implement serverless with functional services. That is the key, but none of them, that's the way I understand. Because of too many functions have come and making even the small thing to happen has become so complex for them. And that is actually hardware also is consuming so much of computational power. And that's where they're not going back on serverless actually. You can always put even monolith as a part of a serverless deployment. Yes, there may be some boundaries where you have to tune it, but nobody is saying that you cannot put monolith. That's where lift and shift came, right? Initially lift and shift came where they did not want to touch anything on the software side, but they want to have an advantage of serverless not being, I don't have to manage. So yeah, again, as I said, please don't see it as a conflict, but see it as, there is some, I think exactly that words, I liked it. We may go back to the history, but with a stronger learnings. Exactly the same thing with JavaScript, right? JavaScript was embraced by so many people. For what reason?
Easier.
Yeah. What was it? Why was it easier?
Not type safety.
Not type safety. You see, everybody said, I don't have to worry about type. Now what is happening? TypeScript has come. Now it is a feature. It's a new name. But if you really see yourself as a product, in fact, last time we said product first, code doctorship. You should always keep product in mind. Any of these shortcuts is going to kill you. Because maybe if you're seeing it as IT services, I have to fix bug. That's a different story. But if you really see giving shape to your product, there are no short. In fact, you compare it to your best friend. Avoiding your best friend is actually inviting more enemies. At a dynamic, you see a lot of runtime exceptions, casting exceptions. So don't do that. So I'm also very glad that I think this is as early as 23 March. Google is talking about how do I really in fact, don't even say that tomorrow somebody may say nano services. Already say. So that way, I think that is where we say for a good developer, you should see how do you handle this? Is it with a good architecture or good coding skills? Take the existing code, transform it in any way. And what is that skill called? Refactoring. Now that is where, whether anybody likes it or not, refactoring is your specialized skill. If you don't, if you see it differently, then, you will again go for one more course here and there. But don't do that. They're all very well connected, very well connected. Yeah, these two things you should actually, maybe there is some more detailed talk on the 15th. That's why he called me. But I think you should look at this. This is still very infancy stage, but I think they're talking in the context of, you give me a binary. What they're saying is, give me a jar in a certain, written in a certain way, and I will know how to split it and deploy it into either as a microservices or a macroservice. It is my magic. But they are slowly enforcing concept of modular monolith, where in fact, one more thing, I think, another practice, what is microservices in the context of GitHub or version control? There is some debate happening. Exactly. So now you see the same thing, we get it as a monorepo, but actually they're talking about how do I split my code base, something like microservices for version control. So that we know they're all very related, but unfortunately, we only see what system says or what an architect says, or what sells you as a job. But if you really see it, there's no difference. It's logically, I think, a fresh out of. These are all some of the questions we also heard from fresh engineers. So that way, maybe we should go back to fresh thinking. What is the difference? So that way, monorepo is one thing, and another thing I can tell you is modular approach. We are already doing it in most of the projects or applications. How do you know that? How do you see that signature of that modular monolith in a lot of applications? He showed about build scripts, right? I gave you the hint.
It's parents and child.
Exactly. You already have that. So now that is also coming now to, you still have only one form, and within that, same packaging. See, now slowly, the real biggest modularity is in packaging. So that way, even if you have too many form files, how complex it is, right? The dependencies and all. Now that is also, that will get killed. And that's what, if you see Spring monolith or something. Yeah, monolith. Yeah, you look at it. So they are trying to leverage packaging. So you have, this just one form file or one script file, and you have different packages, and each packages you can specify the specification of modularity using packaging. So that way, I would say, maybe if I simplify it, it is a product and it is a logical evolution. And you may move to this direction, you may move to that direction, or I can decide with configuration which way to deploy. And that is what is happening. It is nothing different. If you see it from a product, from a business revenue perspective, scale. See, it is at the end, it is a scale of revenue. And that has to be, being in a software engineer, you cannot do something marketing, right? You have to say my product supports it. As an engineer, I'm able to support it. So that's all. Yeah, if you have any other questions, we can interact.
So sorry, is this something like this service? Is it going to take care of splitting the jar into services?
Exactly. It's a deployment module. See, what happens is, they're also not doing anything different. We know about these technologies which we have already done. Can you correlate with, the local communication with, remote communication? What are those technologies? You heard of RPC? Yeah, gRPC, Corba, all that they are trying to bring in that.
Are we going to be providing service where even in the host data centers we can use, or it's going to be cloud specific service?
So it will be independent. It will be independent. So yeah, you can write a driver. If you want to be very close to knowing that, whether it is GCP or Amazon or something, otherwise you can write your own extensions of how to deploy it, how to cut it into pieces and then deploy it.
How is it different from like Kubernetes clusters where we deploy a complete cluster using helms and deploy the whole?
It would be very similar.
The question was that how is it different from a Kubernetes cluster where we deploy with the Helm chart and other things?
Yeah. I mean, whatever the specification you give to make that happen, now you will have to give it for your modules. Then the same logic will be applied.
So it is more or less the same thing or a completely different?
Similar logic, but again, because you use that word help, whatever language constructs you have given to make that happen, for the tool to take insights and then deploy it. Similar insights you give it in the context of Java with package info, manifest files.
Okay, it is more or less a completely Java written different microservices, and how you could disintegrate into deployment magic and make it into a different microservice.
Exactly.
Using form or some other specific.
No, as a developer, you give all these clues as a part of the specific, like, when you write a module, exactly, you can tell that, I want deployment to happen at XYZ package, ABC package. Then that knows how to split it. And then it may find, because it is package level, you would have written one interface as a provider interface for that package. And you will also have a consumer interface, what this package is, what this module is using. Then accordingly, they will start applying that, RMI, RPC approach of creating dynamically those stubs and skeletons. So that, any module, now once it deploys, it also makes it, the stubs and skeletons with the URL information. So that, for the guy who is running module C, depending on B, he will call the stub of that. And then for it, it looks like a local call. Now the deployment, in fact, I also used to use the word build engineering. So now build has become so complex. I mean, some people call it a DevOps, but it is becoming more and more programming, more and more logic. Once upon a time, it was treated as a trivial. It is no more. So that we know it is engineering is not going. Software will continue to demand more and more flexibility. And though we are saying, monolith to microservices and modular monolith, but I would say you should be able to deploy in any way. You should, I code it in certain way, but I support tools to decide in a configuration way, in whatever way it does. Now you have become a much more better programmer, rather than like tell me whether you want it as a microservice, tell me you want it as a monolith. That's not your problem. I write a code and I give you a feature, you decide at a deployment type what way you want to deploy.
Basically, when we see the problem side, when you choose monolith or microservices, so our architecture decision might depend on deployment. So that's the very bad practice which we should avoid. Deployment way strategy, we should not decide the architectural decisions on the technical side. Like you rightly said, right? We should what is our technical architecture?
You see it as a flexibility. It's a feature. See, now as a programmer, you are saying, if you want to look at it as an architecture and complexity, it will give you some insight. But the better way to look at as a developer is, I should be able to deploy either on a monolith architecture because it has got some advantages. Because debuggability, maintainability, evolving to the next stage. And then when you see microservices, it also has got good, I'm able to think very isolated way. I know where the problem is. But then you should also be able to combine. So that way, if you change your requirements, not from one architecture, but take the insights from those architecture and then see how to make your code better and better. This is again the same point I said, as an engineer, you are a code craftsman. Every solution, whatever everybody says, they are all inputs. If you take it as a rule, you are no more a craftsman. They are just saying it as a feedback. and now apply your brain. And most of the time, it doesn't come by saying going this way or that way. What you should do is, can I write smart codely or build smartly that I can deploy it this way or that way.
But initial part of the decision, you have to know which is the good way. Like
there is no good way.
Better, like once you have worked with your experience, you will be more polished. But initially, you need to know that which is the good way to go.
No, that is the theory part. That's what I'm saying. Yes, they have. See, somebody has said that this is good, but they would. I mean, in fact, I don't know. Last time I did mention. I think we all know JUnit is good, right?
Yes.
But I'm asking. There are no asset counts. But when you go and ask JUnit guy, they will say it's not good. But now you saw somebody was saying, that way, yeah, when somebody is marketing it, they know that you are in that 1% lot who does not know deeper. And their definition of good also may be good for you in that instance. But when you become advanced, man, these guys fooled me already, exactly like you were saying, oh, I give you freebies, come, use it. So exactly, I think, yeah, that's where I use the words. There is nothing called good or bad. But yeah, there is a context attached to it. But when a context change, don't get caught, oh man, I thought it was good. But you have already learned something that you thought it is good, but there is some more requirement which is making it bad. So that way, it is your problem as an engineer to go deeper and deeper.
It is an enterprise level, a bigger application. Here there can be a functional script happening at the architecture.
No, I would say whether it is a startup or a big company, yes, you may see more at an enterprise.
Payment service would be totally different.
Right.
So that the functional level script is still may.
No, but yeah, the functional level at a domain level. But again, you should not convert payment into number of functions.
Yeah,
this is like this is what they try to apply.
Service can be.
Exactly. The difference between SOA and microservices is in SOA you see application level interacting. There are multiple, like exactly, multiple applications are there. They are not worried about internals of each application. They are only seeing how applications can integrate each other. But in microservices, your focus is one application and splitting into multiple things, and then being a nuclear family and trying to work as joint family. That way, I think microservices is a cost even for engineers, cost even for the hardware. But again, yes, I'm not saying that at a scale of Flipkart, definitely microservices is the best model. But at the scale of a startup with few hundred customers, definitely it is not. It's the worst model. So that way, everything has the good and bad part has so much of context.
Another thing that microservice or serverless are actually serverless function that service allows is using different languages or language frameworks, which a lot of the times when you're looking at it as an architect who's more skilled in Java, we end up looking at, okay, if we are building a monolith, then it is a single or even a modular monolith, it's like a single form and it's very Java heavy. So you kind of feel like maybe I'm not being able to take advantage of something like Python or running some other kind of language. I haven't tried this, but do you think something like Project Panama, which people keep talking about as this foreign function, interface and all, would that help turn the tide towards a modular monolith? Especially since in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of explosion of these different languages and language frameworks. So, do you think that?
So to articulate the question, a benefit of microservices is to be language agnostic, framework agnostic as a capability, because we have broken down the business functionality into the smallest atomic unit possible, which, for example, say a language, a non-Java language might have a more, easier implementation, more performant implementation, which is not possible in a monolith or even in a modular monolith written in the same language? I believe that's the question. Sathish, you would like to come here and respond?
Sid, so it's like this. Let us, just for a conceptual sake, there are two microservices, heterogeneous and homogeneous microservices. 80 to 90% of the time, we will be either a Java shop, Go shop, .NET shop, or something like that. In that case, just because I'm using microservice, it's basically, it's like a Spider-Man movie. Great power comes with great responsibility. So, but there are people who are not considering its responsibility, right? We cannot trust people. So that is the place where this complexity goes. It's reality. In fact, this is what people like me who are advocating against microservices will catch hold of. But actually, the problem is it's with people. Maybe I will give you a positive case for a change once. This bus booking that you do, right? In the bus booking, they are actually, it's not red bus. There's an inventory system behind the script. And the company which is running, it's a startup company in Chennai. And they run with limited resources. They are a hardcore Java shop. And whatever that you see runs with single MySQL database. And they don't change that easily. But once they try to refactor their track your bus use case, which is not a typical Java use case. They tried their best with the Java. They tried to put Elasticsearch, whatever it is, but it did not work out. And later, when they migrated to Go, it perfectly fit into their use case for two reasons. Point number one, it's completely an independent service. Point number two, Go is an ideal case for more concurrent application, at least as of now that we are speaking about, until structured concurrency comes. They made a right choice because considering all the factors, then it will really work out. But in case you are taking a heterogeneous route, you need to be very cautious, considering that the choice that you do when you are going away from the route, it should pay back with a proper dividend. If it is there, it's a welcome change. And for that welcome change, projects such as Google's Service Viewer is an ideal choice. Basically heterogeneous services. Otherwise, you can deal with it just a POM if it is homogeneous service. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, the follow-up was about something like Project Panama coming into Java, where it becomes easier for us as Java developers to plug in
No, he's going. Yes, we were about to talk about it. Yeah. Very, very good question. We missed that point. Can anybody tell what is Project Panama? Correct me if I'm wrong. I may not know the name, but what you are talking about is, as a Java person, I can talk to some other language runtimes. Perfect. Good question. Thanks. We missed that point. Okay. That brings in another interesting option. As I said, when you are going back, you are not going back just blindly with the old solution. You are going back with the lessons that is learned. Now there is another trend. We have different trends, but it's, if you look at the trends, they have a logical connect. There is something called Nginx unit. For some reason, this project is not that much discussed, but this project is there for some time. But if you read that universal web server, they are going to a level where independent of the language, even the languages had some fight. Earlier, if I need to be a Java person, I will be only Java person. If you are a Go person, you will be only a Go person. But now people are realizing that if I'm fighting in that way, I will be losing my battle. Now they're saying, we all are friends. I will support you, you support me. Why they are doing that? Because now we realize that there are certain cases where C is really good at. There are certain cases where some maybe new language is good at. We need to have that interoperability. When Panama kind of things comes to mainstream, altogether, you need to change it. So that's why I told you, don't stick with your frameworks. Don't go well with your framework, because when Panama or this universal web server comes into picture, what is this universal web server is? With this web server, you don't need to have if you have a Java binary, I can call the Java binary directly. If you have C binary, I can call C binary directly. I don't need to go through the servlet route. So this is coming, but it is still not matured, but your understanding is correct. It's going towards that direction.
You heard of Vertex? Okay. So this is actually ongoing exercise. Yeah, everybody wants diversity. Again, they want to come. This is where I mentioned about, see, you need to see where you should use microservices, where you need to use SOA kind of integration. So that way, yeah, I mean, whatever Panorama, what is it? Panama, or Graal VM, they are giving features, but then where do you apply is very important. Do you want to apply across, homogeneous microservices? Then you are actually making a mess. Yeah, maybe if you want to integrate with customer services, then that flexibility is required. But if you are a company and then you have only 10 people team and then you want to have Python as well as Java, then it's a bad choice. So it's all about where do you want to be granular, what is the context. That way they will definitely help. There are some ideal places where they will be, but we would have used it in 90% of the places in a wrong way.
Just to add to what Rajesh was saying, Vertex is basically a polyglot reactive programming framework. Vertex started off under the Eclipse Foundation. It did not get very popular for a couple of reasons. That is, Quarkus came in, it had a great marketing, and Quarkus is more popular. And Quarkus as a framework is, I would say, a very close to real life implementation of what are the different. I'm not sure if you heard of Microprofile, but Microprofile is basically a set of standards for microservices. And Quarkus is, I believe, a very close to real life realization of the Microprofile standards. Vertex was one of the earlier reactive programming frameworks, came in way back almost about you can say 7-8 years ago. It had JavaScript as they had a concept of verticals to promote reactive programming. So now Vertex has gone more into Quarkus as part of one of the backend components. So you can check it out in terms of if you're interested in polyglot programming frameworks as a capability.
No, maybe I sorry to go against, but I used Vertex. I will go against the concept of using something like Vertex because Vertex had issues. Particularly now you look at it, what are the three languages that they put here? Kotlin and Ruby. Okay, earlier, if I remember correctly, there was JavaScript. Why JavaScript is removed now? Any guess? What happened to JDK? Mushroom. They removed, right? They removed, right? So Vertex as a principle is a very good principle. They wanted to give polyglot programming language because JVM is now considered as an operating system. But later, what they realized is this is too much a diverse ecosystem that they cannot control. And that is a place where Vertex lost ground. In fact, what Vertex had its own good reactive part. You see Quarkus today is actually kind of, it came as a follower of Vertex. Even today, Vertex is being used internally. And Vertex also had some other innovative idea of distributed cache built in. So Vertex came with the concept that you develop one application, scale infinitely without even worrying about anything. You don't need to worry about scaling. And those are all taken to Quarkus. But why I'm saying don't use it is good to know, put it in CV. But if you're using product which you are going to manage it, don't try it. Wait for other people to try, fail, lessons learned, then do it. But polyglot had its own failure.
There's a
Nginx unit, it has long way to go.
But is it trying to?
Nginx is trying to become a universal app server. That's a very interesting concept on paper. So if a concept is very interesting on paper, be cautious, wait, ask your friends to use it, recommend them, they will use.
Just to add on the same lines, I don't want to name the company, certain companies are architect group is coming up and saying that don't use it. Enterprise level standards there.
Yes.
Instead use this. I don't want to.
I know what is the company because I was one of the team members. We failed using it.
Different company.
No, different company.
They were using it and now they're saying that.
Sathish, you're referring to this universal apps, web apps, or
Yes.
Nginx unit. This is what Sathish is referring to.
Very, very interesting thing. For an experiment, please try this. You'll find it really, really interesting.
I think one thing which all of us will agree is that the new shiny silver bullet is exactly what it is, a new shiny silver bullet. But whether it will work when fired from the gun is a different situation. So experiment, please do experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. But keep in mind that building something is different from operating something. And building something at scale is very different from building something.
Thanks. So we have just 2 community announcements. We'll go with it. So 2 things. One is important to community, another one is important to us actually. So one that, as I told, we are doing a lot of other initiatives. We strongly recommend each and every one of you to register for Java Fest. Give us the same support that you are giving us today, because for this support only we are coming all the way. I'm coming from Coimbatore. It takes 10 hours for me to come here. So because of all the support. Be proud with whatever that we are doing as a group, because whatever that we are doing, you all part of it. So we are trying to help these recession people who are affected, whose job is affected with recession, and this is completely free. But we had some strange requests actually, where they are looking for better job and all this stuff. If you know anybody who are looking for a better job, we are doing the same thing, but in a slightly modified manner. But we are doing a paid architectural Java upskilling workshop also. It's called Professional Java Development Workshop. If you know anybody, any company is looking for professional Java training, please do let us know. We'll do it from Java Fest. That is for us to fundraise for Java Fest event. Yeah, and register without anything. Thanks.